Sit at My Grave, Chapter 14. That night was a foggy blur. The McKinneys came around to offer any type of help they could. They asked if Arden wanted them to stay up and talk with them and help him process. They even offered to drive him to the hospital, but truthfully, he didn't know what he wanted. He was almost paralyzed with shock for a while. Gallon eventually got his parents out of the room. They meant well, of course, but Gallon knew Arden wouldn't want to be bombarded. However, he wasn't sure what else he needed right then either. That was his brother. Regardless of any differences or fighting they'd done, that was the only sibling he had, the person he'd grown up with. He knew that news had to be gut-wrenching to hear. Sleep was on and off that night. It was a strange swing between being exhausted and waking up hoping everything was a nightmare. Arden sat in his room. The night he got that horrible news was gone now, but the words and feelings were still fresh in his mind. His brain still couldn't wrap his head around it being real. It happened so fast, so sudden. He wasn't prepared for it at all. Even if he had all the time in the world, he didn't have the slightest clue of how he would have braced himself for it. Arden was back in his house. Merlin and Easton were home from the hospital. They brought back home some of Reed's things. Mumbling talking was always going on. Random phone calls of condolences. Even though everyone meant well, the ringing of the phone always haunted Arden's brain. Hey Arden, you hungry? Want to go get some breakfast? Easton asked on the other side of his door. Arden took in a deep breath, letting it out. His father seemed so relaxed and calm. Arden wasn't sure how, but he hoped he could be more like him. So at ease in this turmoil. Yeah. Is Mom going? Arden asked, walking out. He knew his voice sounded more hushed and unsure now. He was still in a state of shock. Don't think so, Easton said, walking on ahead. Arden caught a glimpse of his mother as they headed out. She was sitting down with some women at their table. That's my assistant. I brought her along for the flight, Easton explained, seeing his son's gaze. They got into the car and headed down the street. Arden's stomach churned as he looked at that spot he had fought with Reed at. So what do you want to eat? We could go to a cafe or something, Easton suggested. A cafe's fine, Arden mumbled. Sounds good to me. You're quiet today. Nothing to say, or are you just still tired? Easton asked. Arden frowned a bit. He was eager to be around his dad again, of course, but he couldn't relax and just talk to him like normal. Not now. Easton turned on some music because of Arden's silence. They cruised to the cafe, both staying mostly quiet. Arden stared out the window, watching as they passed the world. It was a nice day. Arden just wished it was that calm and peaceful in his brain. It looks delicious, thank you. Easton dismissed their waiter. He sat up under an umbrella table in front of Arden, outside of the cozy little cafe. Tastes good, too, Easton commented after tasting his coffee. Arden looked down at his food. It smelled good, but he wasn't really hungry. They cooked this omelet to perfection, Easton commented again, taking a bite of it. Then he sampled his bagel. So, are you excited for graduation? Cap and gown's already picked up from what I heard, Easton told him with a little grin. Graduation. Arden had almost forgotten, and it was just tomorrow now. Yeah, I'm really excited, Arden said, taking a little spoonful of his oatmeal. After his brunch with his dad, the day seemed to go by too quickly, but also in some ways seemed to drag out at the same time. Arden spent most of his day back in his room, while his parents were presumably making arrangements. Arden lay back in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He had gotten a few calls from Gallon and his family, but he didn't want to answer. Being alone with his thoughts wasn't good either, but nothing he did felt okay anymore. Arden found himself struggling with this tie in front of the mirror. It was finally graduation day. He'd been waiting for it for so long, but now it felt so off. Need some help? Arden heard Brinley's voice. She walked up and began helping him with it. Arden, you look so handsome. I can't believe my little baby's all grown up, Brinley said fondly. She was sad, still heartbroken, but this day was supposed to be about Arden, and she wanted to make sure he still felt important when he walked across that stage. Done and done, Brinley said with a little smile as she fixed Arden's tie on him. She hugged him and kissed his cheek. I know you weren't very happy with school, but I'm proud of you for coming this far. Whatever you do after, I hope you know you always have Mama's support, Brinley told him warmly. Thanks, Mom, Arden responded quietly. They both knew the air still felt off, though Arden knows Brinley tried not bringing it up much, especially not when she thought he could hear it. Arden wondered if she was just trying to protect him, or if she thought he didn't care enough to talk about it, since he didn't even bother to visit at the hospital. Maybe he couldn't have done much to help or comfort anyone by going, but now Arden felt guilty for not spending more time there. "We're going to be late. Let's get a move on," Easton said, walking over. Riley glanced at him, then back at Arden. "Yes, you can eat in the car. I brought some breakfast bars," Riley said, waltzing out. Arden followed. He didn't usually get nervous about school events, but he couldn't shake the discomfort he felt getting into that car. Easton drove, his assistant in the passenger seat, while Arden and Riley sat in the back. "I talked to Grandma Verna. She'll meet us there," Riley told Arden, a little smile on her face. Verna? Can't we just show her the diploma later?" Easton piped up. "What's wrong with my mother?" Riley questioned. "I could give you a list," Easton responded, causing his assistant to giggle. "That's rude, Easton," Riley told him, glaring his way. "It's the truth." Easton shrugged. Riley sighed. She turned her head, turned towards the window, getting quiet. Soon arrived to the venue. Plenty of cars were already lined up. Families were out talking and taking pictures. The place was absolutely buzzing with activity. Easton cruised through the lot, finally finding a place to park. "Alright, come on, let's hurry in," Easton said, looking back at Riley and Arden. The four got out of the car, hearing the chatter even louder now. The sun was outshining. The bright smiles and happy tears gave the area a light air of warmth and joy. They walked towards the entrance together, Arden's gown swishing with them as he moved. He found himself focusing on his goal ahead, stiffly trying not to look at all the families around him. It only made him bitter. "There they are!" Arden heard a familiar scream when they entered the spacious building. Chairs were already set up, the big stage and podium at the top stacked with diplomas. Families were already finding their seats while the graduates were being taken to the back to prepare to walk up. "Hi, Arden!" He was suddenly rushed with a hug from Genevieve, while she smiled brightly up at him. Gallon and his family were close behind her. "Sorry about that." Gallon abruptly stopped his apology, looking into Arden's eyes. They texted each other here and there. They hadn't really talked or seen each other in person since that night. "I'm glad you're here," Gallon told Arden in earnest. "Easton, good to see you again," Declan said, putting his hand out towards him. Easton looked him up and down. "Who are you again?" he asked, arching an eyebrow. "Declan McKinney. You know, our boys are best friends." Declan laughed it off. "Oh, right," Easton responded nonchalantly. He shook his hand briefly. "Let's go find a seat, Charlotte," Easton said, ushering his assistant with him. "How are you doing, dear? Is there anything I can do to help you in any way? You let me know, okay? We're family at this point," Genesis said, trying to keep her voice hushed. She hugged Renly tightly. Renly whispered something in her ear. Genesis nodded before looking over at Arden and Gallon, who started trying to have a conversation while Genevieve was bouncing around them. "Jenny, honey, let's go sit down. We get to watch your big brother graduate soon," Genesis said, grabbing her hand. "Okay, bye, Gallon," she said, waving happily at him. She walked towards her mother and Renly. "Well, here we go," Gallon said, turning his attention back on Arden after smiling at Genevieve. "Are you ready?" Gallon asked gently. It was a loaded question. Sure, he could walk on stage, get a diploma, and throw his cap like anyone else. But this was the first time in his life he would be in a setting like this and not see his brother in the crowd looking back at him. "Arden?" Gallon said, touching his arm. "I'm ready," Arden lied. He let Gallon lead him to the back, where they all got lined up in order of their acceptance. Arden never cared for groups and all, but being there right then didn't make him feel as annoyed as normal. Even with Gallon right beside him, he just felt alone. "Just think in a little while we won't have to hear that annoying giggling in the back of our heads anymore," Gallon whispered to Arden. Arden glanced at him. He gave him a half-hearted smirk. That wasn't the type of joke Gallon would normally make. Even Arden realized that. Gallon was just trying to make him smile. It wasn't long before Arden was called up, as they were going in alphabetical order. "Mr. Arden Adler," he heard his name announced over the speakers, followed by clapping. Arden took a deep breath. He walked up the short stairs to the stage on the hardwood floor, feeling all the lights on him. The principal turned towards Arden as he approached him, a cheesy grin on his face as he prepared to hand over Arden's diploma. Arden couldn't help but look down at the crowd as he accepted it. He saw Gallon's parents clapping and whistling for him, taking pictures. Even Genevieve had made him a sign. It wasn't much, just a bright smile and yellow paint that read, "Good job." They were kind people, and had always treated Arden nicely, just like their own child. But Arden couldn't stop his gaze as he looked towards where his family were seated. Riley sat there. She smiled up at him. Her eyes, however, glistened with pain. Grandma Verner stood up behind her, clapping, pressing her lips together in a crinkled smile. Easton's head was down looking at his phone. He hardly bothered to look up, causing Arden's forehead to crease in confusion. He grabbed his diploma and shook the principal's hand. He didn't want to stay up there any longer than he had to. As he began crossing the stage to get off on the other side, Arden's eyes flickered back to the seat on the other side of Renly. There sat Reed's camera in the center, the same one he'd been filming his other graduations, upper grade, or any other accomplishment he had. Arden's jaw clenched as his expression dulled. That empty, isolated chair. Arden could hear his own voice screaming, telling Reed he didn't need him at his graduation, that he didn't want him there. But now, it haunted his brain. Not seeing Reed there like he'd always been, getting up to his feet, clapping, cheering him on, making those stupid jokes he hated, being too loud and embarrassing. Now it felt so hollow, walking down that stage, holding his diploma. Arden clenched the paper in his hand, looking down at it. The rest of the room didn't exist to him briefly. He was getting lost in his thoughts until Renly walked over. "I'm so proud of you, honey," Renly said, grabbing him into a hug. Arden loosely hugged her back. "Let's sit and wait for Gallon now," she said, quickly looking away to wipe her eyes. Arden took the seat by Renly, feeling the sinking in his gut once again. "I love you, baby," Arden heard his grandmother whisper. She kissed his cheek, giving him a few candies from her purse. "A secret sweet for my sweetie," she giggled. The corners of his mouth quirked up as he accepted the candy. A nice gesture, but it was tangled in old memories that he was trying to repress right then. Although Arden tried to make himself focus on waiting for Gallon, he couldn't help but notice his dad had left. Maybe he'd just gone to the bathroom. Arden didn't care about fanfare or graduating in the first place. He just wanted to be done with school. But having his dad there to congratulate him when he got down was something he had been looking forward to. Gallon was called up much later. The room once again erupted in cheers. He came out, eyes shimmering with excitement. He had a gold sash around his shoulder, draped around his robe thanks to him being valedictorian, and his smiling eyes showed just how grateful and proud of himself he was. Gallon shook the principal's hand, even giving him a side hug. Once the microphone was headed to Gallon, the principal stood off to the side, giving him the stage. Arden was confused with the long wait and people standing up. With everything going on, he'd forgotten Gallon was supposed to give a speech, or that he'd even been valedictorian. "Hello, friends, family. As we say goodbye to the lives we once knew, I can humbly wish the best for each and everyone. In our new beginnings," Gallon began his speech. Arden watched his face, and the way he spoke with the joyful enthusiasm he always had. Hearing him speak and be so excited for all these things he had planned for the future, rallying people with him as they shared in his happiness. Arden's eyes pierced right through as he stared at Gallon. He kept his poker face as he listened. His words were probably great motivation for most people, but Arden couldn't get his mind off of Reed. Everyone standing here celebrating, getting back to life. It didn't feel right. All the things they should have talked about and didn't. Now that he wasn't here, the words he spoke to him on that night seemed so much more important. Arden questioned himself. Was he really missing something? There was a constant loop of unanswered things going around in his mind, and it weighed him down.